What if the toxic parents you spent years escaping never truly let you go? What if every distant smile, every casual check-in, every seemingly harmless act of grandparent concern was nothing more than a carefully crafted cover for a relentless 6-year surveillance operation? An operation built entirely to steal my child, destroy my peaceful marriage, and yank back full control of my adult life that I'd fought so hard to build. This unspeakable nightmare crashed into my quiet, peaceful suburban home on an ordinary Thursday evening, all triggered by a single wrapped box left abandoned on my doorstep, marked with 4 cold, chilling words: "Don't make a scene." For years, I'd slept soundly believing my new locks, my distance, and my strict boundaries had finally locked my toxic parents out of my life forever. I was dead wrong. My name is Angela Turner. I'm 38 years old, a devoted wife, and a loving mother to my gentle 8-year-old son, Nathan. My entire adulthood had been a slow, exhausting battle to break free from my manipulative, overbearing parents, Frank and Nancy. They'd spent my childhood policing every choice I made, dictating my friendships, my grades, my dreams, and shaming any decision that didn't align with their perfect vision for my life. As soon as I married Mark and had Nathan, I began building safe, firm boundaries. I changed all my home locks multiple times, cut off nearly all one-sided contact, and intentionally built a quiet, stable, happy life for my small family far away from their endless drama and control. I truly believed we were finally free. But that terrifying Thursday night shattered every last one of my naive illusions. I pulled into my dimly lit driveway after a routine grocery run, my car full of Nathan's favorite snacks and ingredients for our weekly family dinner, and my body instantly went rigid with dread. Parked curbside, completely still and unassuming, was my parents' familiar silver sedan. There was no friendly wave, no warm greeting, no attempt to get out of the car or speak to me. They just sat there in the dark, silent and watching, waiting patiently until my eyes landed on a neatly wrapped gift box, sitting dead center on my front doorstep. The second I spotted that box, their car pulled away smoothly, speeding off down the street without a single second glance back. Tied tight around the box's satin ribbon was a small, plain white note, scribbled in my mother's sharp, icy, unforgiving handwriting. "Don't make a scene." Every survival instinct inside me screamed loud and clear to leave that box untouched, to lock my doors, call the police immediately, and pretend this terrifying intrusion never happened. But after 32 years of being conditioned to obey my parents, every quiet command to shrink down and comply to keep the peace, I froze. That short, cryptic warning didn't feel like a suggestion. It felt like the same controlling order I'd obeyed my entire life. Against every better judgment I had, I stepped out of my car, walked slowly toward the doorstep, and picked up the trembling box. I carried it numbly into my entryway, grabbed a pair of scissors, and sliced clean through the ribbon. The second I lifted the lid, my entire world crumbled out from under me. Staring up at me was a crisp, clear photograph of my baby boy Nathan, fast asleep and completely vulnerable in his own bed at night. Directly underneath it sat a brand new duplicate key to my home, and at the very bottom, a thick, sealed manila envelope, stamped with the name of a high-profile family court attorney. My knees buckled hard, my vision blurred with panic, and I fumbled frantically for my phone to dial 911. Fully aware we were in unspeakable, life-altering danger. Police officers arrived at my home within minutes, calm and professional, carefully documenting every single piece of strange, damning evidence, and warning me repeatedly not to touch or move anything else. Just as they finished setting up their evidence markers and began asking me initial questions, my husband Mark walked through our front door home from work. His eyes scanned the room in an instant, landing on the uniformed officers, the open box on the floor, and my pale, terrified face. All the color drained completely from his skin, his shoulders slumped in pure shock, and he whispered a shaky, terrified line that scared me far more than any evidence I'd just uncovered. "Please don't tell me they actually did it." His quiet, defeated words exposed a devastating secret he'd been hiding from me for weeks. This wasn't some random act of petty harassment or a strange family misunderstanding. This was the final, calculated move of a long brewing, meticulously planned scheme my parents had been building in the shadows for months, right under our noses before we unpack every single horrifying detail of their twisted plan. Pause for just a second. Where are you watching from today? What's the weather like where you are? I'm always amazed to see how far these true, heartbreaking stories travel across the entire world. After a long, heavy, agonizing silence that hung thick in the air, Mark finally confessed everything he'd been hiding. 3 weeks prior, my father Frank had cornered him completely unannounced outside his office building, casual and calm, like he was stopping by for a harmless chat. He'd asked Mark to sign an official emergency guardianship document, legal paperwork that would hand full, total legal custody of our son Nathan straight to my parents. If Mark and I were ever injured, hospitalized, or incapacitated for any reason. Mark refused the request outright, immediately suspicious and uncomfortable. But Frank had pressed on smoothly, explaining that my mother, Nancy, genuinely believed I was emotionally unstable, impulsive, and incapable of reliably caring for my son long term, and that a responsible adult family member needed legal power to take over for Nathan's safety at any time. When Mark firmly ordered him to stay away from our family and never bring it up again, Frank had smiled a cold, knowing smile and said quietly, "You may not get to make that decision." Mark admitted he'd intentionally hidden this entire disturbing conversation from me to spare me the pain of reopening old childhood wounds I'd spent years slowly healing. He'd convinced himself that letting it go, pretending it never happened, was the best way to protect our peaceful life. But in reality, his well-meaning silence had only given my parents unlimited time and unstopped freedom to advance their dangerous plan right beneath our eyes. I felt a sharp, stinging betrayal in my chest. Yet deep down, I understood his fear. My parents had spent my entire life training every person close to me to smooth over their cruelty, minimize their manipulation, and protect me from their abuse instead of ever confronting their toxic behavior. But standing there in that moment, staring at proof of their stalking and scheming, I knew that toxic, endless cycle was finally broken for good. Lead Officer Ramirez pulled on fresh evidence gloves and knelt down to carefully sift through every item inside the box, turning what initially looked like a messy, bitter family dispute into a full-blown, serious criminal investigation. Beneath the official family court envelope lay a tiny, compact digital recording device, a small portable flash drive, 6 high-resolution surveillance photos of my son Nathan alone, his favorite well-worn wooden toy train, and a soft, familiar stuffed bear I recognized instantly. That bear had vanished mysteriously from Nathan's bedroom 4 months prior, immediately after our last tense, awkward visit with my parents, and I'd always assumed we'd simply misplaced it during house cleanup. The second officer, Ramirez, lifted that old stuffed bear to place it in an evidence bag. A faint, unmistakable whiff of my mother's signature floral perfume filled my entire entryway. It was the exact scent that had haunted my teenage years, the smell that would linger outside my locked bedroom door every single night when I was a kid. In an instant, I was violently transported back to being 16 years old, young and trapped in my parents' strict household, hiding my hard-earned college acceptance letters deep underneath my mattress. I'd been terrified my controlling mother would find them, shame me for daring to chase a life outside her control, and force me to abandon my dreams. The memory crashed over me in vivid, suffocating detail. The quiet creak of my bedroom doorknob, turning slowly in the dark, and her sharp, accusing voice cutting through the silence, demanding to know why a daughter who loved her family would ever need to keep secrets. But even that painful childhood memory was nothing compared to the horror we were about to uncover. The 6 surveillance photos of my innocent 8-year-old son were absolutely devastating to look at. They captured Nathan in completely ordinary, unguarded moments, fast asleep in his bed at night, eating cereal alone at our kitchen breakfast bar in the morning, and playing on the playground at his elementary school. The date stamps printed on every single image spanned 2 full months, proving someone had been consistently, secretly spying on my child day in and day out for weeks on end. But the most horrifying detail of all was hidden in the faint window reflection of one playground photo. The person taking those pictures was not my mother. It was not my father. It was a complete, strange, unknown man I had never seen or met in my entire life. Officer Ramirez's entire casual, calm demeanor shifted in an instant. He stood up straight, his expression turning grave and serious, and immediately called for a police supervisor and a full forensic evidence technician team to report to our home. He then turned to me and asked the critical question that changed everything. Had my parents ever possessed a working key or legal access to our home? My throat went dry as I recalled the incident from the year before. My father had helped us replace a faulty, broken lock on our rarely used back door. After we officially cut off contact with them, we'd rushed to replace our front door locks for safety, convinced we'd secured our home completely. But we'd completely forgotten about the back door lock my father had helped install. In that heavy, silent moment, Mark and I both knew the unspeakable truth we'd been blind to for months. My parents had been sneaking in and out of our private home, invading our safe space all along. Inside the thick family court envelope lay a fully drafted emergency guardianship petition, packed full of blatant, malicious lies about my character and parenting. The false documents claimed I'd repeatedly missed critical medical appointments for Nathan, regularly left my young son completely unsupervised at home, and suffered violent, unpredictable emotional episodes that made our household an unsafe environment for a child. Most damning and gut-wrenching of all was a signature block on one key page that looked identical to my husband Mark's official signature. A signature Mark instantly, vehemently confirmed was forged and fake. Directly beside the forged signature was a professional-looking therapist evaluation letter from a licensed counselor I had never contacted, never met, and never spoken to in my life. It fabricated entire regular therapy sessions that never happened, painted me as an unstable, dangerous mother, and formally recommended Nathan be immediately removed from my care before an inevitable family crisis occurred. Mark's face turned ashen the second he laid eyes on the small digital recorder. He recognized the exact model perfectly. 2 months prior, he'd found an identical recording device tucked underneath the passenger seat of our family car. After carpooling with a coworker, he'd brushed it off as a forgotten work device, assumed it belonged to his colleague, and carelessly thrown it in the trash without a second thought. This new recovered recorder had a small handwritten label stuck to its side that read "Kitchen 2." Those 2 simple words confirmed our worst fears. This was only one of multiple hidden surveillance devices planted throughout our home, watching and recording our every move. We granted the police full permission to conduct a complete protective sweep of every room in our house, and what they found turned our once safe, peaceful family home into a confirmed monitored prison. A tiny pinhole camera was hidden inside our kitchen smoke detector, positioned perfectly to capture every single family meal, every private conversation, and every quiet moment we shared at our kitchen table. A second recording device was concealed deep inside the hallway vent, directly outside Nathan's bedroom door, capturing every breath, every laugh, every quiet word my son spoke at night. Neither device was connected to our home Wi-Fi. All footage and audio was stored locally on hidden memory cards, meaning whoever had planted these devices had no intention of streaming live footage. They planned to return again and again to collect months of stolen data and build their false case against us. Light, fresh scratch marks circling our back door lock further confirmed repeated, unauthorized entries into our home. In that moment, every small, strange, unsettling moment from the past few months finally clicked into place. I remembered my mother showing up completely uninvited to Nathan's school fundraiser 2 months prior, smiling warmly, hugging me tightly in front of other parents, and engaging me in long, distracting small talk. At the time, I'd thought she was just trying to embarrass me publicly or force a reconciliation. Now I realized the terrifying truth. She'd been deliberately distracting me in public to keep my attention occupied, so my father could sneak into our empty home, undetected, to plant more surveillance devices and gather more private information. Officer Ramirez solemnly warned us that the forged legal documents alone would not hold up for criminal charges, but the overwhelming combination of hidden cameras, stolen surveillance photos, a duplicated house key, and physical break-in evidence built an ironclad criminal case against my parents. He strictly forbade us from confronting them directly, posting anything about the case online, or discussing the evidence with anyone outside law enforcement, then strongly urged us to evacuate our fully compromised home for the night. We rushed to make emergency arrangements, asking Mark's sister to pick Nathan up safely from his supervised birthday dinner, while we packed small overnight bags for our family. Right before we fled our own home, Officer Ramirez asked one final, haunting question that sent chills down my spine. "Did your parents know your husband would be working late tonight?" My blood ran cold with dread as I remembered the strange, out-of-character phone call I dismissed that morning. My mother had called Mark's office pretending to confirm a fake family dinner invitation, casually fishing for our exact evening schedule. They'd known Mark would be late. They'd known I'd likely be home alone, and they'd planned for me to find that terrifying box completely by myself. The note "Don't make a scene" was never a simple warning to stay calm. It was a calculated, manipulative order designed to keep me isolated, scared, and completely vulnerable when I uncovered their scheme. As we stepped out our front door to leave, the evidence technician walked down the hallway, holding a third sealed evidence bag. Inside was a small old memory card clearly labeled with my full name, dated the exact week my son Nathan was born 6 full years prior. We spent that entire sleepless night at Mark's sister's house, too terrified to rest. Every distant creak of the floor, every rustle of wind outside, every quiet household sound made me flinch, convinced someone was turning our back door key and breaking into our home again. We kept the truth hidden from our young son, simply telling him a sudden pipe break had made our house unsafe to stay in for the night. Nathan accepted the gentle lie easily, but his innocent question broke my heart. He quietly asked if his grandparents knew where we were staying. That small, harmless question proved just how deeply my parents had inserted themselves into my child's world, despite our years of strict estrangement. Mark sat silently beside me all night, his face heavy with crushing guilt and regret for hiding my father's earlier attempt to manipulate him. Once Nathan finally fell asleep on the couch, Mark broke down and apologized to me profusely for his silence and secrecy. I was undeniably hurt and disappointed that he'd kept such a critical, dangerous secret from me. Yet I understood his fear. He'd only been trying to protect me from reopening the deep old childhood trauma I'd spent so many years healing. But in that quiet, vulnerable moment, we both agreed unequivocally. We would never again let anyone's desire to protect me enable my parents' toxic, abusive behavior. From that night forward, we would face every threat and every secret together as a team. The next morning, we headed straight to the police station to review the contents of the 6-year-old memory card, and what we discovered shattered every last illusion I had about my parents' so-called love. This was not a recent plan. This was a lifelong campaign of surveillance and control that started the literal day my son was born. The oldest file on the card was a secret hospital recording captured mere hours after I'd given birth to Nathan, when I was exhausted, sore, emotionally drained, and still recovering from labor. On the audio, my mother sounded soft, gentle, and endlessly concerned, pressuring me to sign temporary medical authorization forms that would hand her full control over my newborn son's healthcare. I'd refused her pushy requests at the time, exhausted but firm. But the second I stepped out of the hospital room to use the restroom, my father's cold, ruthless voice filled the recording. "She will come around when she realizes how little control she has." They had been plotting to take my son from me, to strip me of my motherhood, since the very first day Nathan entered the world. The memory card was packed full of stolen private information spanning 6 entire years: our family tax records, Mark's detailed daily work schedules, Nathan's full school calendar, and twisted, out-of-context notes on every single private argument Mark and I had ever had behind closed doors. Every mundane, ordinary family moment was deliberately twisted and fabricated into supposed proof of my instability and unfit parenting. A routine canceled dentist appointment was labeled severe medical neglect. A babysitter arriving 10 minutes late was documented as leaving a minor child completely unsupervised. A single glass of wine I'd drunk at a holiday family dinner was marked as dangerous substance abuse. I finally understood the horrifying truth. My parents were never documenting actual danger in my home. They were slowly, methodically manufacturing a fake criminal and child neglect case against me, one tiny twisted detail at a time, for 6 long years. We were introduced to Detective LeChou, the lead investigator specializing in felony stalking and electronic surveillance crimes. She shared devastating updates on my parents' immediate damage control tactics. Within hours of our police report, Frank had contacted the police department personally to control the entire narrative. He framed the box of damning surveillance evidence as harmless old family archive materials and boldly painted me as an emotionally unstable adult who overreacted to minor family disagreements. He even named a retired police captain from his social circle to falsely vouch for his reputation as an upstanding, community-focused citizen. Detective LeChou took no chances, immediately ordering full home lock replacements, an official school security alert banning both my parents from Nathan's campus, and an emergency temporary civil restraining order to protect our family. Our family attorney, Melissa Grant, dug deep into the fake court documents and uncovered a brilliant, terrifying layer of my parents' fraud that no one else had noticed. The fake therapist's license number printed on the fraudulent evaluation letter belonged to a real licensed professional in our state, but the name listed on the document was completely fake and unregistered. The forged notary stamp on Mark's falsified signature was also a genuine official stamp, one that had been formally reported stolen 3 months prior. My parents had meticulously built their fraudulent legal case using fragments of real, verifiable official documentation, gambling entirely on the fact that no one would take the time to verify the tiny critical details that would expose their lies. As I stared down at the formal cease and desist notice Melissa had drafted to permanently cut off my parents' access to our lives, a sharp, vivid memory from when I was 22 years old flooded my mind. Straight out of college, I'd worked tirelessly to earn an acceptance letter to a prestigious out-of-state graduate program, a program that would have given me the freedom, education, and independence to finally escape my parents' control for good. But Frank had snatched my acceptance letter out of my hands without a second thought, folded it harshly, and dismissed my lifelong dreams as selfish, foolish experiments. My mother had cried for days, guilt-tripping me relentlessly, until I'd given up my spot and agreed to stay trapped in my hometown under their rule. Decades later, they were still doing the exact same thing, trying to rewrite my story, steal my future, and control my life. Only now their target was my innocent child. I signed that legal notice slowly and firmly, choosing myself and my family for the very first time in my life. Minutes after signing, we received our first major breakthrough in the criminal investigation. The serial number from the hidden hallway surveillance camera traced directly to a local security equipment store, where police confirmed the device had been purchased in cash to avoid detection. Store surveillance footage identified the buyer instantly: Calvin Reese, a suspended private investigator with a long public record of illegal surveillance and stalking violations. Emergency phone records proved constant, repeated contact between Reese's personal phone and my father's business line for months. But by the time police tracked his identity, Reese had cleared out his entire office overnight, vanishing completely without a single trace. Just hours after we learned of Reese's disappearance, my mother sent me a chilling, manipulative voice message designed to rebuild her innocent grandmother facade and threaten me subtly. She feigned gentle, loving concern over rumors that Nathan had missed a few days of school, offering to step in and care for him full-time to ease our family stress. Her warm maternal tone dropped sharply to a low, menacing whisper for her final line. "A judge will care about stability, Angela. Think carefully before you make yourself look unstable." I forwarded the voicemail directly to Detective LeChou without a single reply. For the first time ever, I didn't hear a loving mother's concern. I heard a calculated, desperate control freak reading straight from a rehearsed script. Melissa called me minutes later with catastrophic, heart-stopping news. My parents had rushed to formally file their unfinished emergency guardianship petition with the family court that exact morning, beating us to the legal punch before we could submit our official defense. They'd crafted an entirely fabricated narrative for the judge, claiming Mark and I had fled our home abruptly following a violent domestic crisis, and that I was suffering from severe irrational breakdowns that endangered my child. They attached every piece of their fraudulent evidence: the fake therapist letter, Mark's forged signature, heavily cropped and altered surveillance photos, and a false sworn statement from Calvin Reese, who lied under oath as a neutral family safety consultant. Their formal petition demanded full emergency custody of Nathan, unlimited access to his private school records, and legal permission to possess our home keys indefinitely. The court scheduled a high-stakes emergency custody hearing for the very next day. At the courthouse, the next afternoon, my parents showed up dressed immaculately, polished and poised, perfectly playing the role of generous, devoted, concerned grandparents for every court staff member in sight. Frank greeted attorneys and court clerks by name, clearly familiar and comfortable inside the legal system, while Nancy kept a soft, sad, worried expression plastered on her face the entire time. She attempted to step forward to approach Nathan, who was waiting safely with Mark's sister down the hallway, but a court officer stopped her cold due to our temporary no-contact order. For a split, unguarded second, her sweet, caring facade completely melted away, revealing the cold, unbridled hatred and resentment hiding beneath her performative kindness. Their defense attorney argued aggressively on their behalf, painting the entire surveillance box as harmless old family records, claiming the spy photos were taken out of pure grandparental concern for Nathan's safety, and dismissing the duplicated house key as an old, misplaced spare key accidentally mixed into old belongings. Melissa destroyed their entire false narrative in an instant by laying the heavily edited, cropped photos from their court petition side by side with the original unedited surveillance images seized by police. The photo they'd used to claim Nathan was wandering unsupervised alone at school clearly showed Mark standing only a few feet away, watching over him carefully. The picture they'd labeled as proof of my intoxication and poor judgment was simply a casual group birthday toast, with 6 other adults holding identical wine glasses in celebration. Cornered, exposed, and desperate, Nancy interrupted the court proceedings openly, ignoring the judge's order to remain seated. She ranted uncontrollably about my lifelong impulsivity, my poor decision-making skills, and Mark's supposed weakness for failing to control me. She insisted someone had to plan for Nathan's future, because I was inevitably going to fail as a mother and collapse under life's pressures. When Melissa pressed her directly on whether she'd authorized anyone to illegally break into and surveil our private home, Nancy stared straight into my eyes and coldly replied, "A mother does what's necessary when her daughter refuses help." Frank tried aggressively to silence her mid-sentence, but the judge and every court witness present caught her damning, self-incriminating words loud and clear. After the court listened to Nancy's threatening voice message in full twice, the judge issued a firm, decisive ruling. He completely denied their emergency guardianship request, issued a strict permanent no-contact order banning my parents from all interaction with Nathan and his school campus, referred all fraudulent documents to the court's fraud investigation unit for criminal review, and formally barred my parents from filing any future petitions regarding my son's custody or welfare, without prior written notice to Mark and me. Outside the courtroom, Frank finally lost his polished, composed public demeanor. He seethed with anger, sneering that everyone in our community knew their spotless reputation and knew my supposed true, unstable character. For the first time in my entire life, I refused to shrink back, refused to apologize, and refused to let his reputation intimidate me. I told him calmly to let everyone see the actual evidence of his crimes. Nancy burst into fake, tearless sobs and turned to Mark, begging him to stop me from ruining Nathan's relationship with his grandparents. But Mark finally snapped back after years of silence and complicity. "You ruined this relationship yourself, the second you spied on our child and broke into our home. Frank snapped angrily that we would never be able to prove they'd personally authorized the home intrusions. Before anyone could respond, Detective LeChue stepped forward from behind Frank, her badge clearly visible, and confirmed they were actively building a full conspiracy case against both parents. Panicked and cornered, my parents fled immediately for the elevator with their attorney. As the elevator doors slid shut, Nancy stared at me with pure hatred and typed furiously on her phone. Within 5 short minutes, every single member of our extended family received a mass group text from Nancy, smearing me as a mentally unstable daughter who'd falsely targeted and arrested her own loving parents. But in her desperate rush to destroy my reputation, she made a fatal mistake. She accidentally attached the unedited kitchen surveillance photo captured from our hidden smoke detector camera, dated 3 full weeks before the mysterious box ever appeared on our doorstep. Dozens of relatives downloaded the damning photo before Nancy could delete the botched message. Forensic metadata analysis confirmed the image was exported directly from a computer folder explicitly named Angela Home Monitoring, linked straight to my father's official work laptop. Their carefully crafted, decades-long public narrative of being loving, generous, misunderstood parents crumbled completely in a single afternoon. The very next morning, police executed full legal search warrants on my parents' private residence and Frank's consulting office. Investigators recovered duplicate copies of our house key, paid cash invoices to private investigator Calvin Reese, the stolen notary seal used to forge Mark's signature, piles of unused professional surveillance equipment, and dozens of thick, organized binders documenting years of targeted surveillance. The binders contained detailed background checks on our neighbors, Nathan's teachers, our closest friends, and every extended family member who might support or oppose their agenda. They also found dozens of pre-drafted anonymous complaint letters, ready to be sent to Nathan's school administration, Mark's workplace, and child welfare services at any time. Their malicious master plan was crystal clear: isolate our family from all support systems, destroy our public credibility and reputations, then position themselves as the only stable, trustworthy family solution to salve Nathan from us. Police tracked down Calvin Reese hiding at a remote motel outside Sacramento, and he agreed to fully cooperate and testify against my parents to reduce his own criminal charges. He formally confessed that Frank had paid him thousands of dollars in cash to install hidden surveillance devices throughout our home and conduct daily spying on our family. He also confirmed Nancy had personally coordinated the school fundraiser distraction, specifically to give Frank a window of time to sneak into our empty house and plant more monitoring equipment. Forensic device data contradicted his partial denials, proving his surveillance equipment had been placed directly inside Nathan's private bedroom. 1 week later, Frank and Nancy were officially arrested on multiple felony charges, including residential burglary, stalking conspiracy, forgery, official fraud, and illegal electronic surveillance. Their defense team released a public statement claiming the entire case was an unfair criminalization of a harmless private family disagreement. But newly unsealed court records quickly exposed their years-long terror campaign for the public to see. Frank was immediately suspended from the nonprofit board he'd led for over a decade. Nancy was forced to step down from all church leadership roles, and dozens of former family friends began forwarding years of suspicious, probing messages where my parents had obsessively pried into our private lives. We completely overhauled every single lock, security device, computer, and cell phone in our home to eliminate any remaining risk of surveillance. Mark changed his entire work commute and daily routine, and Nathan's school added my parents' photos to their permanent restricted visitor list. The financial and emotional toll of rebuilding our safety was enormous, but every single change we made brought us closer to peace and further from their control. Even after their arrest and public exposure, my parents continued insisting every illegal invasion and fraudulent act was done out of pure parental love. I always gave them the same quiet, firm reply: real love does not require forged signatures, hidden cameras, or stolen keys to thrive. 3 weeks after their arrest, Nancy violated the active restraining order by sending an anonymous floral arrangement to Mark's sister's house, where we were still residing. The handwritten card simply read, "Families forgive." Police traced the flower purchase to a prepaid card and confirmed store footage of Nancy buying the arrangement herself. She was immediately arrested again, and her pretrial release was fully revoked. As officers led her out of the courthouse in handcuffs, she locked eyes with me and mouthed 4 bitter words. "You did this to us." In that quiet moment, I finally understood the critical difference between guilt and accountability. I had never done anything to destroy their lives. I had simply stopped shielding them from the natural consequences of their own cruel, obsessive choices. The 9-month criminal trial process was filled with endless delay tactics from my parents. Frank switched defense attorneys twice to drag out proceedings, while Nancy filed repeated medical accommodation claims and made public appearances painting herself as a sick, innocent victim of my cruelty. They rallied longtime community supporters to write character letters vouching for their generous, reputable reputations. But prosecutors countered with irrefutable, undeniable evidence: months of surveillance footage, cash payment records to Reese, all forged legal documents, and Nancy's own leaked surveillance photo that exposed their entire scheme. Files seized from their home uncovered decades of hidden sabotage I had never known existed, proving their control over me was lifelong, not recent. When I was 22 and chasing my graduate school dreams, my mother had impersonated me over the phone to contact the university admissions office, permanently cancel my fully funded acceptance, and erase my chance at independence. My father had emailed my college boyfriend behind my back, lying about my supposed emotional instability to ruin my young relationships and ensure I never built a life outside their influence. Their campaign of control was not new, it was a lifelong pattern. They'd simply expanded to target my child and steal my motherhood. We chose to include every detail of their lifelong manipulation and sabotage in our civil lawsuit, refusing to let them maintain their false image as loving, misunderstood family members. Mark stood faithfully beside me through every painful revelation, holding me through waves of grief and anger, as I unlearned the cruel, toxic labels they drilled into my head my entire life, that I was too sensitive, too impulsive, and too incapable of making good choices on my own. We kept all explanations for Nathan gentle and age-appropriate, simply telling him that his grandparents had broken serious legal rules, and that none of what had happened was his fault. When he quietly asked if his grandparents still loved him, I told him the honest truth: they felt a twisted, possessive obsession they called love, but true love can never exist without respect, boundaries, and consent. Nathan fell quiet for a moment before whispering that he never wanted anyone secretly taking pictures of him or watching him in his room ever again. That simple, heartfelt wish became the core of our official victim impact statement for the court. Faced with overwhelming forensic proof, Reese's full testimony, GPS location, data proving home break-ins, Frank's custom fake therapist document template, and Nancy's stolen notary seal, both parents accepted formal plea deals to avoid longer prison sentences. Frank was sentenced to multiple years in state prison, plus long-term supervised release. Nancy received county jail time, intensive formal probation, mandatory court-ordered mental health treatment, and a permanent lifetime, no-contact order prohibiting her from ever approaching me, Mark, or Nathan again. The court ordered full financial restitution for all our legal fees, security costs, and emotional distress damages. Their privileged, respected life collapsed completely overnight. Frank's consulting business shut down permanently after losing all major clients. Their large family home, where I'd grown up trapped under their control, was sold to pay massive legal debts and restitution fees. They lost every community leadership position, every social connection, and every ounce of public respect they'd spent decades building. On the final sentencing day, Nancy stared at me bitterly and asked if ruining their entire lives had finally been worth it. I replied softly and firmly, "I didn't destroy your life. I opened the box. Though a full year after the trial, our home finally feels peaceful, safe, and truly ours again. healing didn't come from one single dramatic moment. It came from small, ordinary daily wins, falling asleep without checking every room for hidden cameras, letting my phone sit untouched on the counter without obsessing over messages, watching Nathan run freely into school without scanning for threats, and resolving small marriage conflicts without hearing my father's critical voice echoing in my head. Mark and I completely rebuilt the trust between us, promising each other full honesty and transparency from that day forward. No more well-meaning secrets. We attended voluntary couples and personal counseling, not because my parents' fake lies about my mental health were true, but because we wanted to build healthy, honest support systems for ourselves, refusing to let my parents turn seeking help into something shameful. Our civil lawsuit settlement fully funded Nathan's future education and covered every remaining security and legal expense from the case. We chose to view the funds as long overdue restoration for everything stolen from me, not a reward. My parents were court-ordered to surrender 12 full boxes of surveillance footage, photos, recordings, and stolen documents spanning 6 years of our lives. A forensic team destroyed nearly all of it to erase their toxic hold on us forever, except for one single item, my original graduate school acceptance letter, stolen and hidden by my mother 20 years prior. At 33 years old, I reapplied to my dream graduate program and got accepted. I read the acceptance email aloud to Mark and Nathan, finally holding my own future in my hands with no one to take it from me. Extended family members reacted in predictable, heartbreaking ways. Some apologized sincerely for blindly believing my parents' lies for decades. Others hid behind neutrality, pretending felony stalking, forgery, and surveillance were just two sides of a petty family dispute. I chose to walk away from anyone who expected me to minimize my trauma to preserve fake family peace. Neutrality is the exact empty space where toxic, controlling people thrive. I taught Nathan a vital life lesson I wish I'd learned sooner. Hatred keeps harmful people trapped in your life, but boundaries set you free. Forgiveness can be personal and private, but access to your life and your love must always be earned. This entire journey was never revenge. I never manipulated, lied, or harmed my parents to take them down. I only preserved the evidence they left behind, reported their illegal crimes to police, and refused to back down from the truth when they tried to break me. Their catastrophic downfall was entirely self-inflicted, the inevitable consequence of their own years of obsession, cruelty, and control. I framed my mother's old handwritten note, "Don't make a scene," right beside my new graduate school acceptance letter. Those 4 words no longer feel like a terrifying, controlling order. They now mark the exact moment I stopped obeying, stopped shrinking, and finally broke free from a lifetime of manipulation. The hardest, most vital lesson I carry from that terrifying day: controlling, abusive people demand your silence to protect their false power and perfect narrative. Always document the truth. Always ask for help. Always build firm, enforceable boundaries. And never confuse blind family loyalty with permission for someone to invade your life and harm your children. Now tell me honestly, would you have opened that mysterious unmarked box on your doorstep out of curiosity, or called the police immediately without touching a single thing? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. If you believe in standing firm against toxic family manipulation, choosing truth over fake peace, and protecting your children at all costs, smash the like button, subscribe for more gripping true family horror stories, hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload, and share this story with someone who needs to hear this powerful boundary lesson. True healing never comes from waiting for your abusers to regret hurting you. It comes from building a life so full, so peaceful, and so unapologetically yours that their cruelty no longer has any power to hurt you at all.